They sold my land without telling me. Not just a plot. Not just a few acres. My entire ranch, 1,800 acres of family legacy, gone. On paper. It was a Wednesday when my world cracked open. I was loading hay onto the back of my truck, the late afternoon sun turning the fields gold, when my phone buzzed in my shirt pocket. I almost didn't answer. But I did. And it was my lawyer, Rachel. "Cal," she said, breath short, voice tight. "You need to come into town. Right now. It's urgent." I wiped sweat from my forehead and leaned against the trailer. "Is this about the zoning permit?" "No. Worse. The Oak Summit HOA filed paperwork claiming they own your ranch." I laughed. Out loud. Like she had just made a joke. "Rachel," I said, "you and I both know I've got deeds, tax receipts, grandfather's will, all of it. They can't file anything." Her silence made the laughter die in my throat. "They submitted a signed sale agreement. From you." My blood ran cold. "That's impossible. They claim you sold the property to the HOA 6 months ago," she continued, "and that the HOA sold it to a developer 2 weeks later. The first phase of construction begins in 40 days. I was already in my truck, engine roaring. "Don't let them break ground." "I'm trying." "But Cal, the signature on the sale form? It looks like yours." I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I dug through every drawer, cabinet, and fireproof box I had. My grandfather was meticulous. We had original deeds from the 1940s, old county maps, and even receipts for fencing wire bought during the Nixon administration. There was no mistake. This land belonged to me. Had belonged to my family for nearly a century. The next morning, I walked into the county records office with a folder thick enough to be used as a doorstop. Rachel met me at the front. "They pushed this through fast," she said. "Too fast. Someone inside had to help them." She laid out the documents across a conference table. And there it was. My forged signature. A notary stamp from a woman married to the HOA president. A fake sales contract, and a development map overlaying my wheat fields with swimming pools and cul-de-sacs. They thought I wouldn't notice until it was too late. They thought they'd already won. They had no idea what they just started. I stood in that stale county records office staring at the paper like it was a death certificate. My name. My signature. But it wasn't mine. Rachel pointed to the notary stamp. "That's Janice Miller. Wife of Thomas Miller, HOA treasurer and Daniel Riker's best friend." Daniel Riker. The HOA president. The same man who once left a note on my gate telling me my barn paint clashed with community aesthetics. I had laughed back then. But now, he'd crossed a line no one comes back from. "This is fraud," I said. "And I'm not letting it go." Rachel nodded. "We'll contest it. But Cal, you need to understand something. This isn't a simple case. The developer they sold it to? Fairmont Development Group. They're massive. Deep pockets. Slick lawyers. If we go public now, they'll bury you in legal motions while they pave over your fields." She was right. They had the momentum. I needed more than just righteous anger. I needed leverage. That night, I locked myself in the farmhouse and started digging through the old records again. Granddad kept everything: letters, contracts, even a ledger tracking rainfall by decade. I wasn't just looking to stop them. I was looking for a way to turn the tide. And that's when I found it. A thick envelope marked "Inheritance Parcel, 1963. Inside were transfer papers, land that had been gifted to my grandfather from a neighboring farmer who died without heirs. The parcel was 280 acres, listed under a different plot number than our usual holdings. I laid out the old county maps, compared them to the new ones. My jaw tightened. The Oak Summit HOA neighborhood, the one Daniel Riker ruled like a suburban king? It had been partially built on that land. Land I legally owned. Half their fancy homes, their clubhouse, even the HOA's own office building, all sitting on land that was never transferred properly. The HOA had just assumed it was theirs. And that assumption was going to cost them everything. The next morning, I met Rachel at her office and laid the maps across her desk. This was never included in any sale. Never developed under permit. Never legally transferred. Her eyes widened. You own under half the neighborhood. I nodded slowly. They stole from me. But while they were busy faking signatures and selling my ranch, they built their empire on my dirt. Rachel let out a slow whistle. If this holds up, Cal, it's not just a lawsuit. It's a collapse. Let them break ground, I said. Let them celebrate. When they think they've won, that's when we strike. 2 weeks later. I played my part well. To the outside world, I was the angry old rancher screaming about injustice, just another man crushed by bureaucracy. I showed up at town halls, HOA meetings, even called into a local radio station. I was loud, emotional, and completely underestimated. Meanwhile, Rachel quietly filed the claim of ownership over the 280-acre parcel. It triggered a county review, but the notice was held up in legal limbo, which bought us time. Time I used well. I started talking to residents. Not everyone in Oak Summit loved the HOA. Some hated it. One guy, Derek, told me they fined his wife for having the wrong breed of dog. Another woman, Linda, was furious about a $500 fee for installing solar panels. They weren't loyal to Riker. They were frustrated, fed up, and ready to talk. I asked one simple question. Do you know who really owns the land under your house? The color drained from Linda's face. I gave her a copy of the inheritance records. I'm not here to hurt good people, I said. But they built their castle on a foundation of lies. And they've got to answer for it. She didn't just believe me, she passed the word around. The HOA board had no idea that their own residents were feeding me documents, letters, fines, even internal memos. And those memos were gold. One in particular, dated 5 years ago, recorded a conversation between Riker and the board about unconfirmed parcel boundaries. Riker's response: just move forward. It's not like the old farmer's gonna rise from the grave. No. I didn't rise from the grave. I just got angry. By the end of the second week, I had everything. Proof of fraudulent sale of my ranch. Verified ownership of the land Oak Summit was built on. Testimonies from residents. And internal documentation showing they knew. I stood on the edge of my wheat field one morning, watching a bulldozer rumble in the distance, preparing to dig into what they thought was theirs. Rachel called. They just finalized the construction loan. 8 figures. Backed by projected property value. Perfect, I said, gripping the fence post. Cal, what's the plan? I stared at the horizon. We let them keep building. Let them spend every last cent. And then, when the concrete's poured, the signs are up, and the homes are listed, we tear it all down. From the outside, I looked like a broken man. I wore the same dusty boots. I showed up at HOA meetings, red-faced and frustrated, ranting about land rights and threatening lawsuits that I pretended to have no chance of winning. People laughed at me. Some whispered I was losing my mind. Daniel Riker even patted me on the shoulder at a town hall and said, "Sometimes, Cal, it's just time to move on." I smiled back. "And sometimes, it's time to reclaim what's yours." He didn't get it. Not yet. Meanwhile, beneath the surface, Rachel and I were working overtime. We hired a private title investigator to go through every legal loophole in the HOA's expansion. What we uncovered was staggering. They skipped 2 mandatory environmental assessments. They submitted zoning requests without disclosing land dispute history. And best of all, the developer's loan documents showed they used my stolen ranch as collateral. They built their entire financial house on a foundation of lies. And I had the blueprints. We compiled every forged document, every shady transaction, every illegal shortcut into a file thicker than a dictionary. I named it Project Payback. But I wasn't ready to strike. Not yet. Because the deeper their investment, the harder the fall. So I waited. They broke ground on my ranch 3 weeks later. Bulldozers tore up the topsoil that had fed my family for generations. Survey stakes marked the future. Summit Ridge Estates, a gated community with a clubhouse, a gym, and premium modern homes starting at $790,000. I watched from a distance, stone-faced, arms crossed as they poured foundations over my wheat. They didn't wave. They didn't care. But I did. Because I knew every inch of that foundation was a nail in their own coffin. Then came the flyer. One afternoon, I found it stuffed in my mailbox, printed on glossy stock with bold letters across the top. Oak Summit HOA, securing the future of our community. Inside was a section about protecting the neighborhood from disruptive land claims and outside interference. They called me a disgruntled former landowner. Said I was spreading misinformation to intimidate homeowners. It was laughable, until I saw the final line. As of next month, any further trespassing by Calvin Brooks will be reported to authorities. I kept that flyer. Then I printed 50 copies and stapled them to the walls inside Rachel's office. This is what arrogance looks like, I said. Let's hit the switch. The chain reaction begins. First, Rachel filed the formal land ownership claim, not just over the 280 hidden acres, but over the original 1,800 acres they had forged and flipped. This triggered an immediate investigation by the county property assessor's office. Within 72 hours, notices were mailed to every home within the disputed area. Notice of pending land ownership dispute. This property is the subject of a legal claim. Until resolution, all property transactions are frozen, and mortgage lending is suspended. Panic began to spread. Realtors backed out of sales. Buyers withdrew offers. Lenders called to ask why escrow was frozen. Daniel Riker called Rachel's office 6 times that day. She didn't answer. Instead, we held a meeting. Not with the HOA. With the press. Local media caught fire. The headline hit the newsstands the next morning. Homeowners shocked. HOA built on disputed land. I sat down with the most trusted reporter in the county and laid it all out. Fraudulent sales, forged signatures, internal HOA memos, notarized documents signed by friends of the board. And of course, the maps. The maps that proved my family still owned nearly half of Oak Summit. It wasn't just a juicy scandal. It was a reckoning. By the end of the week, the Oak Summit HOA office was overwhelmed with residents demanding answers. Daniel tried to hold an emergency meeting. I went too, stood in the back as he paced the room, sweating through his linen shirt, stammering half-truths about ongoing legal complications. A woman in the front row stood up, tears in her eyes. My daughter was supposed to close on her house next month. The bank just backed out. We're ruined. A man followed, holding a letter. You told us our titles were clean. What is this, Daniel? Daniel froze. Then he saw me. Our eyes met. He opened his mouth to speak, but I got there first. You built your empire on stolen land, Daniel, I said loud enough for the whole room to hear. You thought nobody would notice. But I did. And now it's all crumbling down. He didn't respond. Because he couldn't. If you think Daniel got exactly what he deserved, comment. Justice. Meanwhile, the lawsuits rolled in. The developers sued the HOA for $2.5 million, alleging misrepresentation and breach of contract. Individual homeowners began lawyering up, realizing their mortgages might be invalid. The county launched an audit into how permits were issued in the first place. Rachel filed a restraining order preventing any further construction until the ownership dispute was resolved. And as for the HOA's precious clubhouse? It sat squarely on one of the parcels I now legally controlled. I posted a sign on the lawn. Private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted. C. Brooks, legal landowner. I nailed a copy of the original deed to the clubhouse door. Riker tried to tear it down. A sheriff made him put it back up. And I wasn't done. I had waited. Watched. Let them build their dream. Now I was going to take it all from under their feet. The next phase was simple. I filed for eviction. Not for one house. Not even 10. For the entire zone sitting on my 280-acre parcel. The law was clear: if you build on land you don't own, and you do unknowingly, or with reckless disregard, the original landowner can reclaim it. And I intended to. Every inch. It started with a letter. Within 48 hours of filing the eviction claim, the county served formal notices to every resident living on the disputed 280-acre parcel. That's over 60 homes, neatly landscaped, freshly painted, and illegally built. The letter was simple, but devastating. Dear homeowner, you are currently residing on land that is the subject of an active ownership dispute. Until this matter is resolved in court, the land is considered private property. You are hereby notified that your current occupancy may be unlawful. Please seek legal counsel immediately. The fallout was instant. Phones rang. Lawyers panicked. Banks froze. Lenders refused to close pending mortgages. Insurance companies began suspending coverage. One bank even recalled an entire loan package backing half a dozen homes, citing ownership irregularities. HOA residents, once smug and silent, started showing up at my farm gate. Some came yelling. Some came begging. All came with fear in their eyes. A young couple, new parents, stood outside my fence one morning as the baby cried in the back seat. We didn't know, the husband said. We just bought the house 2 months ago. If we get evicted, we'll lose everything. I looked at him the same way they used to look at me when their HOA fined me for having livestock too close to the property line. Then you should have asked who really owned the land before you built a life on it, I said flatly. Because I sure as hell didn't sell it. They left in silence. Daniel Riker, once the king of Oak Summit, disappeared. No press. No public statement. Not even a Facebook post. The man who used to strut around in golf polos and mirrored sunglasses, handing out violations like candy, was now a ghost. Rumor had it he skipped town and lawyered up fast. Rachel confirmed the HOA had drained their reserve fund trying to fight my land claim. And they were still bleeding, fast. The lawsuits were piling up. Class action from the residents. Fraud case from the developer. And my own suit for damages, harassment, and illegal seizure. The HOA's lawyer tried to settle out of court. He came to Rachel with an offer. Mr. Brooks would receive a lump sum of $2 million if he agrees to drop the ownership claim and allow the HOA to purchase the 280 acres in question at assessed value. I laughed when she told me. They stole my land, built a kingdom on it, then tried to run me off like a stray dog. And now they think they can buy forgiveness? I shook my head. No deal. Rachel smiled. That's what I thought you'd say. The media firestorm. When national news picked it up, everything changed. The headline on one major outlet read, "Entire neighborhood built on stolen land, owner strikes back." Within days, my story was everywhere. TV interviews, podcasts, real estate panels. Some painted me as a villain. Heartless farmer evicts families to settle a score. But others saw the truth. Man defends ancestral land from corrupt HOA. One opinion piece read, "This isn't about vengeance. It's about justice. You can't just steamroll over people because you have money and connections." I didn't give interviews. I didn't respond to the press. I let the evidence speak. And it screamed louder than I ever could. The breaking point. It came one rainy Thursday. Residents gathered at the Oak Summit clubhouse, what was left of it. The mood was chaos. Some shouted at each other, some cried. Others held legal documents in shaking hands, reading words they never thought they'd see. Foreclosure. Eviction. Land seizure. The HOA board, what remained, stood at the front of the room, pale and speechless. No Riker. Just empty promises and blank stares. And then I walked in. I didn't say a word at first. Just stood there in my work boots, arms crossed, rain dripping off the brim of my hat. People turned. Eyes widened. And someone near the back muttered, That's him. One woman stepped forward, holding a binder full of closing papers. Please, she said. Isn't there something we can do? We didn't know this was stolen land. I met her gaze. I tried to tell you. When your HOA started this mess, I filed complaints. I showed up to meetings. I asked questions. And you all stood by while they fined me, trespassed me, and tried to erase my family's name off the land. I paused. You didn't care, until it became your problem. Silence. I'm not here to fix what they broke. I'm here to reclaim what they stole. The court ruling. 3 weeks later, the final ruling came down. Judge Walters sat behind the bench, flipping through stacks of documentation. She took her time. Then, she delivered the blow. This court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Mr. Calvin Brooks. The land in question, both the original 1,800-acre ranch and the additional 280-acre inheritance parcel, remains, and has always remained, the legal property of Mr. Brooks and the Brooks estate. The court further rules that all development, construction, and residency established on these parcels by the Oak Summit Homeowners Association and its affiliates was unauthorized and unlawful. All current occupants residing on the 280-acre parcel are to be notified immediately of their status as tenants on private land without lease. Mr. Brooks retains full rights to pursue compensation, eviction, or sale at his discretion. You could hear a pin drop in the courtroom. Even the judge looked angry as she delivered her final remarks. This was not a mistake. This was a systematic abuse of power, forged documentation, and a deliberate campaign to suppress a rightful landowner. This court will not protect those who weaponize bureaucracy for personal gain. That moment felt good? Tap like, let's give justice the applause it deserves. The HOA's remaining legal team looked like they had been hit by a truck. Residents sat stunned. Some wept openly. Others just stared ahead, hollow. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just nodded and walked out. Because I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. Reclaiming what's mine. That same evening, my office sent out the eviction notices. 62 of them. Every house sitting on the 280-acre parcel got the same message. This land is no longer yours. You have 30 days to vacate or purchase the land beneath your home at current market rate. And believe me, market rate had changed. With lawsuits flying, media circling, and the HOA's reputation in ashes, the land wasn't just valuable. It was leverage. Some tried to negotiate. Others begged. But I had waited too long, suffered too much, lost too many nights to play the nice guy now. One by one, the houses fell. Some sold to outside developers. Others were foreclosed and auctioned off. The rest? Abandoned. Oak Summit was collapsing from the inside out. And I was the one holding the sledgehammer. 30 days passed like slow thunder. Some homeowners tried to rally support, petitions, pleas to the media, online campaigns calling me heartless and cruel. They called me a villain. They said I was ruining lives. They forgot who ruined mine first. The irony wasn't lost on me. When their HOA fined me for dust from my harvest, when they demanded I change my fencing to match the neighborhood aesthetic, when they forged documents to sell off my land, no one stood up for me. Not one. But now that they were the ones with everything to lose, suddenly I was supposed to show mercy? No. I showed them justice. The great sell-off. I didn't want their homes. I wanted my land. So I sold it. Not the houses, just the ground beneath them. One by one, I put each parcel up for auction. Some were bought by land developers. Others went to corporate real estate firms. A few were scooped up by the same construction company that sued the HOA. And the prices? Oh, they were beautiful. Because now, nobody wanted the hassle of living in Oak Summit. No bank would touch a loan there. No insurer would issue a policy. It was a poisoned well, and I was the one holding the last clean bucket. Some homeowners who had the means tried to buy their land back. I let them. At triple the original price. One woman, Board member Janice Miller, the notary who certified the fake documents, came into Rachel's office practically shaking. "I'll pay," she said. "Please. Just don't make us leave." Rachel slid the contract across the table with a smile. "We accept cash or certified funds. No financing." Janice's husband had to sell 2 of his trucks and their vacation cabin just to stay in the house they thought they'd stolen from me. I didn't blink. Evictions and bulldozers. The rest? Evicted. Some tried to fight it. Most packed up and left. Within 90 days, over half of Oak Summit was empty. Foreclosed homes lined the streets like ghosts of arrogance past. And when the last legal window closed, when the final appeal was denied, I brought in the bulldozers. People came from all over the county to watch. The first house to fall? Daniel Rikers. The man who tried to erase my legacy. The one who called my family obsolete. His 2-story palace with the columned porch went down in 12 minutes flat. I watched from the edge of my field as the roof caved in, the walls collapsed, and the dust swallowed the wreckage. Did I cheer? No. I exhaled. Because it wasn't about destruction. It was about restoration. Restoring the legacy. Over the next 6 months, I partnered with local farmers and a few small business investors. Together, we turned Oak Summit's corpse into something living again. The northern half became pasture land, open and green, dotted with cattle and horses. The southern section was converted into a produce co-op and a weekend farmers market. We laid walking trails where their exclusive golf path once ran. The old HOA clubhouse? Demolished. Replaced with a community barn where kids could learn about farming, livestock, and honest work. I didn't just reclaim the land. I reclaimed the meaning of it. What they paved over with arrogance, I tilled with memory. What they fenced in with greed, I opened with humility. The last drive out. There was one more moment, one I'll never forget. It was mid-fall. The leaves had started turning red along the edge of the property. I was mending a fence near the eastern road when I saw it, an old silver sedan rolling down the cracked pavement of what used to be Oak Summit Lane. Stuffed to the roof was suitcases. Plastic bins strapped to the roof rack. And in the driver's seat, Daniel Riker. I stood up slowly, hands resting on the fence post. He slowed when he saw me. We locked eyes, just for a second. His face was hollow. Pale. Lost. He didn't roll down the window. Didn't say a word. Just pressed the gas and disappeared down the hill, past the shattered entry sign that once read, "Welcome to Oak Summit, a community of excellence." Now, only the 2 rusted posts remained, leaning at odd angles like broken bones. That was the last time I saw him. Know someone dealing with a power-hungry HOA? Share this story with them, they need to see this. Want more stories like this one? Hit subscribe, we've got another coming tomorrow. Reflection on the porch. That night I sat on my porch, drink in hand, watching the sunset crawl over my land. My land? No HOA letters. No fake lawsuits. No trespassing developers. Just the wind in the trees and the soft creak of my rocking chair. It took everything, time, patience, pain, but I won. Not through vengeance. Through persistence. Precision. And truth. They thought I'd fold. They thought I'd sell. They thought I'd vanish like some relic of the past. But this land wasn't just dirt and borders. It was blood. History. Family. And now? Now it was safe again. Final words. I'm not a cruel man. But when someone tries to steal the legacy your grandfather built with his bare hands, when they mock you, threaten you, forge your name, bulldoze your past, and call it progress, you don't ask nicely. You take it back. And that's exactly what I did. Because in the end, Oak Summit didn't fall because of me. It fell because of its own arrogance. I just made sure the world saw it crumble. Quick poll, whose side are you on? Comment 1. For Calvin. 2. For the HOA if you dare. This story isn't just about land, it's about legacy, justice, and the quiet power of standing your ground. In a world where bureaucracy and entitlement often seem to win, this tale reminds us that truth, patience, and persistence still matter. The HOA believed they could erase a man's history with forged papers and legal threats, but they forgot one critical thing: integrity doesn't bend under pressure, it digs in deeper. For those of us who've worked hard, built something with our hands, or inherited what our fathers and grandfathers left behind, this story hits close to home. It teaches us to document everything, know our rights, and never underestimate the strength of calm, calculated action. But perhaps most importantly, it's a reminder that real justice doesn't always come easy, but when it does, it comes with weight. And when you fight with truth on your side, even the loudest liars eventually fall silent. In the end, the man didn't just win back his land. He restored what should have never been taken.